Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Real Talk. I am Evan Swanson with Guild Mortgage, and with me today is a person I would consider a friend, but someone that I get together with, a couple times a year, Josh,
Yeah, yeah.
and really, truly, genuinely enjoy his company, really enjoy where our conversations go. And we had lunch last week, and Josh, so pleased that you could join us today. Welcome to the Real
Well,
Talk podcast here. Josh Hackenjos with Keller Williams Real Estate Professionals.
thank you, Evan. Yeah, happy to be here and simply a continuation of our great lunch conversations. And I've got soup and I've got some kimchi and all this stuff on the desk just for the sort of authenticity of the experience.
We
So yeah.
we get to have some adventurous, fun meals together, and it's true. When we get together, it seems like time just goes like that. We sit down, we start lunch, and next thing I know, it's 90 minutes later, and I'm late for a call because our conversation has gone down so many avenues that I think are fun and interesting. So if you're watching this, hopefully you'll find this conversation fun and interesting as well. But part of the reason I wanted to have Josh on is because one of the topics we talked about last week, and Josh, we'll get into it later after we go into kind of your origin story, but I think you are currently in a state of mind or in a certain sort of rhythm in your real estate practice where you're trying to ramp things back up a little bit. And I want to share, I want you to share with others because I think there's a lot of people that could benefit from where you're at. But before we go there, let's start with your origin story. You have been a licensed realtor for 13 years, and as I got prepared for this conversation, I've realized, dude, I've never even heard your origin story before. So tell us how you found real estate.
Okay. It's so I started out as a vendor. I was the guy showing up in team meetings and speaking, and I owned the company that put up all the little hangman signs, the little for sale signs that you see in the front yard. We own that company, a few of those companies actually over the years, and sort of through acquisition and growing that business with our business partners, we had, it started out, it was me and my dog driving around digging holes all day. And then we just grew up from there. So I was the guy who was in the, parking lot of the brokerage, changing from my Carhartts into a sport coat and slacks, going in, with the paint still on my fingers, presenting about this company, saying, "Hey, we've got this new product, we've got this product," running back out, back into the Carhartts, and then out digging holes for the rest of the day. Through that adventure, I met a whole lot of amazing brokers all over the city. And once I had that business to a place where we had leveraged some pretty amazing management talent and no longer needed to have me out there running around, I was looking for the next option. And it was also 2011, and we were in dire straits, as so many people in the industry were. As vendors in the industry, we were suffering in a different way. All my signs were just out sitting in front of 13 months of inventory. And so, we had all our own challenges. And yet, through the conversations with those brokers, I had a few who just said, "Hey, man, you've been beating your head against this for so long. We all know you. What do you think about coming over to the licensed real estate side of it?" And like I said, I had an amazing team, so I was able to do it. I had the time to do it. And I first got licensed with a Keller Williams office up in Vancouver. And that was where there was an opportunity for me. And this was, again, fall of 2011. So if you graph this out, the market's just dragging along the bottom right there. And so it's a testament to my naivety or optimism, you choose. But I just thought, oh, yeah, this looks like a great time to get in. So it was a lot of short sales, a lot of foreclosures. And I'll get the shorter version of this, but essentially I went up there and I crashed and burned. It was a dismal failure. And I just couldn't pull it off. Just couldn't, like, leave Earth's gravity, if to get the thing up and running. What's interesting is there's some relationships, some client relationships, and clearly some broker relationships from that period that have lasted and are still really valuable to me. But that first foray was a disaster. And so I came back, licked my wounds, learned the business side of it, and I worked in more operations and transaction coordinator, back office side for a company. And just, I had a business background, so I understood that part of it. And so I spent some time working on that, and then finally connected with another team. Actually, one of a very meaningful relationship for me with Chris Suarez at Keller Williams, and he brought me into the world of looking at it more through systems and execution of those systems. And then once I saw that it was scalable, it was just I was smitten, and it was really interesting because I've now seen it from all these different angles. And then once I arrived there, I was just like, oh, this is the fit. And and we'll get back to that around it. What it really was just Chris was all about kind of he's a very expansive individual, but it was also around the boringness of it. Just simply getting up and implementing the plan. And we'll talk about that because I've now taken that, it made it even smaller and more boring since. But that was really where it was, that it was not about every day being a miracle and suddenly you find business. It's like you execute on these key actions and then the business comes after, and you have to fall in love with the work or you're not going to stick around.
Well, and I think as we head into 2025, there's a lot of real estate professionals, mortgage professionals, and just people, right? It's just a natural time of year to be reflective on how you spend your time, how you create your habits, what patterns you're in. And many of us, of course, will set New Year's intentions, and want to make changes to the way that we operate. And one of the things that was inspiring out of our lunch recently is we really talked about that, how you have a very predictable business based on quote unquote boring metrics or boring activities that you conduct. But as long as you conduct those every day, you sort of have a pretty predictable outcome from those activities.
Yeah.
So that I think, yeah, I don't want to spoil it right now, but so you mentioned Chris Suarez, who, if people don't know who Chris Suarez is, look him up. Extremely, extremely smart, extremely, extremely successful, awesome professional that grew up here in Portland, is sort of nationwide now. But what a great guy to be mentored by. I'm curious, Josh, who else were you fortunate enough to be in touch with, and who else do you feel like influenced your business to help you create your style in this business?
So it's funny because I was just searching, and I'm gonna butcher his surname, but Harris up in Vancouver has a Demilovac, I think, or and I apologize, Harris. Sorry, I never get it right, but there's a lot of consonants in there. But the Harris Realty Group. So he was at the Vancouver location where I was flailing, and it was so fascinating. He was the guy who just he was stepping into those meetings with a an excitement and graphing out where we were in the big picture so that we would stop freaking out in the short term. And just he was looking for opportunity while everybody else was just putting their head on their desk and just saying, "Oh, it's the end of the world," right? It was a scary time. We didn't really I mean, you were in there, like we didn't see the end in sight necessarily. And in the moment, it's hard to see opportunity when everything around you is dried up. And so Harris is one of those guys, and I still, ping him every once in a while with stuff. And he was just somebody who had a mindset of, I guess, just put in the work and optimism towards the results of that work. Uh, and he was just somebody who I really admired during that time, and was maybe a reason why I didn't just give up altogether. Was simply the messages that he was bringing to those. You imagine it, there was not a lot of rah-rah in the meetings in October of 2011. It was
Hmm.
sort of like it was like a morgue. It was tough. And so but he came in there, and so Harris is another one who I always look back on and just with a lot of gratitude. And then and also who I worked with up there, Janice Hall, who is no longer with us, but she was somebody who basically took me through that process and identified the fear, and then was sort of like, okay, stop look, because you get that fear. You're 3 months in, it's not happening yet. You got bills to pay, and then like that slower, long view to just say, keep doing these activities and serve people. And a lot of these folks, it's around like serving the client and the long-term gain from that. So anyway, that was especially in those key early years. That was those were really important to not bail on the whole idea out altogether.
Well, I think so. This is a good transition because what I want to talk about next is knowing you are a deeply genuine person. You show up and you come across as someone who knows exactly who you are, and you also have a deep level of care for your community. And what I mean by that is that you see your real estate practice in terms of serving others and providing consultations and advice as doing your part to serve the community, to help others achieve their needs, right? And in preparation for this, I went in and read your Google reviews. And one of the things that's consistent in the people that left reviews for you is that Josh cares. Josh genuinely cares about who I am. Josh genuinely cares about what I was trying to do. And Josh was genuinely interested in solving my issue, not necessarily making a sale. So you have a very servant approach to your business, but you do it in a style and a manner that's very genuine to who you are. And because I've been in this practice now for 22, 23 years, I can't say that about every realtor I meet. I mean, I think there's a lot of professionals out here who feel like we have to put on a costume or a certain personality or a facade to appeal to consumers in general. And one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that you are very comfortable with who you are, and you're very comfortable with the knowledge that you are going to be a good fit for many, many people, but you're also willing to say no, and you're also willing to tell your clients no when you have the realization it's not, necessarily a good fit for them. I'm curious to know, I mean, can you somehow summarize, or was there a certain point in your career where you realized that you weren't simply just going to conform to what this sort of, idea needed to be a professional realtor, and you sort of just really honed that in and said, I am who I am, and this is who I'm going to be?
Uh,
That's
yeah,
a
there.
big question, by the way.
No, no, it's okay. And I've got a few notes here. I'm gonna keep flipping back to, but ultimately, it's like there was a time at which I did an intentional scaling down, and I want to say this is probably around 2017, in which I became the smallest version of this business I've ever done. And I became an org chart of one, which is terrifying. And yet also, what happened was I had a few instances in which, you know, I was watching people need someone who would listen before present, somebody who would simply give some time for to flesh out the why behind what was going on. There was a thing where I saw this PMAR thing. John DaCosta was speaking, and he uses this conversation piece around like simply asking people, tell me about the prior real estate experiences you've had. How many homes have you sold? Oh, so many. Okay, tell me, what did you like about that? What did you not like about that? What was good about the experience with that broker? What was not good? How did it go? Was the result right? And then and then my take on that was then this isn't his word, but basically then scrapping whatever presentation you had brought with you and instead responding to those exact things. Oh, it sounds like you really need somebody who will communicate with you in this way around these hours because you're busy with this. And that person didn't deliver on that. And it was a bad experience. And this one did. So now let's focus on how do I communicate with you? And like throw out the presentation you thought you were going to bring and instead respond to those specific needs. And that was when I scaled down, I was then able to more dramatically, it's like the small little speedboat instead of the big, ship out on the ocean. I was able to corner a lot more easily,
Mhm.
and I could run into something and be like, oh, I put my foot in my mouth in that conversation. I need to recover that. May I apologize? I'm so sorry. Like, oh, you're not ready to hear that yet. I need to just listen before I speak. And I was able to pivot more quickly with the smaller model. And then it became fun because it was just genuinely helping people. I always say that like my phone rings when people are going through life transitions.
Mhm.
Nobody calls me just to say, hey, Josh, we just want to let you know we're staying put, not moving. They call me because there's a birth, there's a death, there's a marriage, there's a divorce, there's a job relocation, something, or parents need, some multi-generational stuff we're all running into now. Parents need help with this. My phone rings because they're saying, we're a little overwhelmed. Let's run this by Josh and see how he can help. because I've got too much on my plate. I'm trying to clean out grandma's house and I'm overwhelmed. So my thought is, if my phone's ringing with that, somebody's probably already taken a few swings and gotten a little overwhelmed before they get to the point where, like, I would love it if they're like, oh, the first thing we should probably call our realtor. No, most people just try to figure it out first. But if they've called, then it's like, okay, how can I help? And that's it. Like that's where we start.
Well, there's a couple things there you said that I really, really like what you talked about. And one was that in that period where you downsize to yourself, I can sense, and again, knowing you, that you really truly get energized by the ability to serve others, to help others solve their problems. And I love that. I think that for so many of us, we get caught up in, the pressure of having to close transactions, because let's face it, that's how we get compensated. If we don't close transactions, we go hungry. But ultimately, if you want to close more transactions, if you want to grow your business, then focus on how you can help others solve their problems, and understand that there's going to be instances where people call you for help and your solution is not the correct solution. So be willing to say no and be willing to help that person go down the right path. And if you do that, for 8 hours a day, in time you will have more business
Yeah.
than what you can have. So I love that. And I think for other professionals out there, that's something to really hone into. Number two, approach every conversation with curiosity, right? I think oftentimes we as professionals, I mean, we have similar conversations that become redundant, and we almost begin to classify a certain person as a certain type of, client, and how can we help them and what are their needs. And before we even hear that, the answers out of their mouths, sometimes we won't even ask questions that need to be asked because we think we already know the answers. We're having assumptions. And so, expand on that. What I'd like to know is, when you're talking to a home buyer, home seller, a prospective home buyer, whatever the case may be, what are the questions you ask? What's the digging? How do you approach those conversations with curiosity, to uncover the needs that you ultimately get to serve?
Yeah. Well, and let me circle back on one thing real quick, just because I don't want to be just the sort of like TED Talk, inspirational guy with no real backing behind it, because a lot of this, like, it all sounds well and good. Love on your community. Like, I'm looking for the quote. It's on my website. There's this Wendell Berry quote around like things we build. We can build a barn, we can build a painting, we can build a sculpture, and communities are also something we build. And we can either build them well or we can build them poorly. And that's another choice we make. And it's this idea of like, so I absolutely believe in that. And we've got bills to pay. I am
Mhm.
not independently wealthy. I am not like I need to run a successful, profitable business just as much as anyone else. And my version of doing this takes longer. My version of doing this is not a solution who needs to get paid right now.
Mhm.
I believe that's a conflict of interest in what I'm trying to do, because I need to be able to walk in, and these are some of the examples, and I need to honestly say to someone, I don't care if you buy a house now or 5 years from now. It's all the same money to me. It's all the same work for me. Like, I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. And I genuinely don't care. Now, I have to be honest when I say that. And it's not just a line, which means that I have to have been successful to a certain extent on the back end. I have to be like, I believe it's a duty to show up without a great need of my own, to genuinely say, what do you need? And I have to do work on the back end to be able to show up like that. And for me to just say, an example is, I sit down with people and it's like, they call and they say, we want to sell this house. And I sit down and I say, fantastic. What would it look like if you don't sell the house?
Mm.
Would this be a good rental? Let's look at the numbers there. Have you thought about keeping this, and maybe can you afford to buy the next place without this? What about a trailing rent? Do you have any interest in doing that? If not, I'm not going to sell you on something. But what I am doing is talking myself out of a job, because if I help my clients build wealth, they're going to remember me as somebody who said, hey, have you ever considered, you bought this in, well, when the market was crashing in, 2011, when anyone would have been crazy to get into real estate, and you bought this then for 250 grand. What do you think about just holding on to it? And they may have, I've had this where they said, can we do that? Maybe let's call Evan and find out, right? And so it's like, now, did I just talk myself out of a paycheck? Yes. But am I helping somebody with wealth generation and building a legacy wherein 5, 10 years from now, they're going to be in a better position to then, not necessarily even use me so I get paid. It's not even, it's like I have to get so far away from that to be able to actually say, what does this do for this person? Now, like one of the key metrics when I split off into the solo business, like I started measuring instead of closings and GCI and the fancy big numbers that would go on the billboard, which are not indicative of anything. I want to see people's P&L. I don't care about volume sold. Let me see your P&L. What's your net profit? Like,
Right.
but instead of measuring all that, I started measuring referrals. And I started, the number I'm tracking is referrals, which means I treated someone well, such that they had a good enough experience that they would genuinely trust me with their friends, family, coworkers, right? And so, sorry, I got off track there, but ultimately, like the metrics we track are indicative of what our values are to a certain extent. And
Right.
so, and I've had this happen now where, people, they kept it as a rental or they said, you know what, it's not the right time. Is there a solution? And yeah, not all of them are going to circle back around, right? I mean, it's not, I don't have control over people's Google searches. People forget, I'm not that memorable. And so I get that. But my hope would be that if that's how I approach it, that shows up enough to be a viable business that I get to go do. And I can consider myself fortunate that I can get away with that, like that this gets to be my career and I can go help people.
Right. Exactly. Love it. Doing the right thing ultimately and realize it. And your business is 1,000% referral based, right? I mean, you're not relying on outside sources necessarily for leads. Um, now, I've seen it and I've been in your classes, I've been in your meetings. There are many, many other real estate professionals that show up when Josh Hackenjos is holding a class or teaching, something along those lines because you do have a lot of competency in a lot of different areas. Um, and you're willing to share it, which is awesome. Again, with nothing in return, you're willing to share your secrets. Now, one of the things that we talked about in our last lunch meeting is you were quite vulnerable, frankly, and you'd mentioned that late last year you'd kind of stepped away and you didn't put as much energy and inertia into your business. And now you're feeling re-energized again, and you're ramping back up your activities. Um, and I no doubts that your 2025 will flourish as a result of it. And when I was sitting there listening to you tell your story, it just resonated because I think there's so many real estate and mortgage professionals out there that have been ground down by the last 2 years. I mean, this has been a real estate trough. The industry has been in recession. Hopefully 2023-24 will end up being the trough. We'll begin to see growth in 2025. But there's a lot of real estate professionals out there that are feeling burnout, because they have worked hard in the last couple of years and they have not gotten rewarded like they were accustomed to. So I was wondering if you would just share a little bit about your journey and sort of where your mindset's at and how you've re-engaged with your business and the types of things you're doing to build positive momentum into 2025.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm pretty upfront about it. And I share about this. And I try to go in and teach and speak at the brokerage. And there is an ulterior motive there. Like the, I, I get to sharpen my tools against other great brokers. Additionally, those relationships, especially with the newer brokers, and some of those new agents, they become a great help in a solo business like mine. So honestly, I get to encounter a lot of very clever people who then can become a help because, as you probably know, it's hard to take time off in our business when we're really busy. Now, to that point, I had my normal kind of clients' needs through this last end of last year, and I feel I took good care of them, but there was an extent to which it's been a very busy few years. This is a very interesting business in which we can work all the time because we can work from anywhere. I've done plenty of consultations from a place we go to in Mexico, and it's like sitting there and I try to hide the fact that there's palm trees behind me or whatever. But um, and what that means is, yeah, you can work from anywhere, but you can work from anywhere. So it's hard to get away. So essentially, I had a place where I knew we're going to come out of this, we're going to slingshot out of it. And there was a moment where a lot of it was just, boy, every conversation is hard right now. And I had plenty of buyers who I sat down with, and we ended up getting to a point where I even just said, yeah, don't buy right now. I don't think this is a good idea. And I had sellers who said, hey, we want to sell. And yeah, maybe don't sell right now. And there was a lot of kind of punting down the road because even just through the counsel that they were bringing me in to bring, I just kind of said no several times, which is crazy, right? Because I would have been energized by the work, but I genuinely didn't think it was the right thing. And so then I found myself with a little bit of extra time, and I just said, we're going to get busy again. And I would regret it if I didn't grab a little bit of time just to reset. And so I did. And the thing in our business is when you do that, you're not just impacting that week, you're impacting 90 days down the month because energetically you have to be planting those seeds to get into that actual transaction business 90 days out, 60 days out. And so that was my first quarter, was just making that intentional choice, which I'm glad I did. And then knowing that it was going to take a little while, like I hadn't really tended the furrows of my field very well. And so like I'm mixing metaphors here, but ultimately, like I knew it was going to take a while to come back. And man, once we were into spring and we were in this trough, and then the fundamental question of what it is we do, how we're compensated, what is our value, and then the NAR settlement stuff coming down the line. And those conversations started in my world in the spring because I was one of the first ones to roll out a listing that without going into details, basically necessitated a lot of communication with brokers.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Call me and let's talk about it. Uh,
Right.
and so the double whammy of we're in a market trough, and now we had better be able to articulate our value in a more fundamental way than we've maybe ever had to. I've loved it, by the way. It's been a fantastic conversation to get into. But boy, what a like getting ready for the spring market. And then you just kind of hit this like wall of like, oh, okay, let me take a second and make sure I know what it is I do, why I do it, why anyone's going to pay me for it. And and then be able to articulate that to the public. It was an interesting, like, okay, ramp up and stop. And it was a great pause, and a lot of smart people came up with great ways to address it. But that was an interesting thing as well. Like first quarter of this year, um, and again, I'm glad it happened because now I have a more clear uh, vision of what it is I do and why I do it than I would have if everything was hunky dory through the whole thing.
Awesome. Yeah. So what, and when we had lunch, your business plan or business activities were super simple. Yet, as I said before, because of the relationships you built, because of the reputation you have as being a very honest, transparent, caring professional, you have a loyal following that, would use you in a heartbeat for repeat business and also feels very comfortable referring you to friends, family, and whoever else may ask them about real estate. Would you be willing to share what your activities are?
Uh, yeah, I'll give you my basic ones. How are we doing on time? I
We're
get
doing
chat.
good. We're doing
Okay,
good.
good. Let me, I want to share, but I also just pulled a thing off, and you're going to have to bear with. I pulled the thing off my nightstand because there's something, this has everything to do with my business. This is Anne Lamott, some instructions on writing in life. Has nothing to do with real estate. Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. But this is, okay, so this is about writing, but bear with me. This will all make sense.
I love it.
This is like, and this is one of my key things where I'm going to go ahead and like, she's talking about writing, but let's substitute in working our jobs, right?
Okay.
And so like she says, writing has so much to give, so much to teach, so many surprises. That thing you had to force yourself to do, the actual act of writing, turns out to be the best part. And this is where it's at. It's like discovering that while you thought you needed the tea ceremony for the caffeine, what you really needed was the tea ceremony. The act of writing turns out to be its own reward.
Mm.
And this is everything for me because I don't like to work. I don't know. I don't want to work. I'm a fundamentally lazy person. I want to enjoy my life. I want to do things that I enjoy. And I've managed to come up with a thing where, not always, but I can fall in love with the work itself so that the things, the jobs I have to do to run a real estate business are actually things I enjoy doing. So I'm not, it's not like, oh, I got to go to work. It's like, oh, I get to go love on my community.
Mm.
Right. So,
Yep.
and by falling in love with the work, like that, and that's the whole thing. It's like that the tea ceremony was actually what you wanted. The ritual was the actual thing. So then that to say, what I've tried to build out for myself are things that are um, self-serving in a way. So one of my big things is like these gratitude messages, right? So I am, like I said, I'm a referral-based business, and so I have these. Um, I'll sometimes sell a home for somebody, and I track who that referral was from, and then who that referral was from, and I get it. It almost becomes ridiculous because what it starts out with is like, it's just the normal, like, hey, Susie, you referred me, Bill, and they just sold their house. Thank you so much for that. But then what I do is I go, you know, like, hey, Adam, you referred Nick, who referred Lisa, who referred, Kevin, who referred Susie, who referred Bill, who just sold their house. And I send a little thing and I'm like, and you don't know who any of these people are, but I wanted you to know what a big impact, like what a ripple effect your one referral made in my life and my family's life and all these people's lives. And I just wanted to say thank you. And I'll go all the way up the tree, right? So it can be 7 deep sometimes. And I call it self-serving because when I'm done going to each of those people 7 deep up the referral tree, I feel so uh it's an energetic reset, right? It's a cold plunge for me. Like I'm bursting because I just did a gratitude exercise that took me 20 minutes of sending silly emojis. But at the end of it, yeah, I got paid and I helped somebody buy or sell a house. Fantastic. But I just got to finish the rest of my week with a gratitude energetic reset that makes it okay. And that then I can say, oh, this is my job. Like I get to impact the community and I get to do this for a living. So that's what I say about like the tea ceremony. So that's
Yeah.
one of them. So whatever that looks like in somebody's world, but like gratitude exercises that are connections with your community who've entrusted you with their friends and family. Like, yeah, that's a big one. For me, text works. Um, and then I do a lot of handwritten postcards, just because I traveled a lot as a kid, and I used to love getting postcards, and I love sending postcards from places. And there's something about a scribbled little handwritten note card that just, you know, I don't know. I like getting letters, and nobody gets letters anymore. And so I'm a little bit of a Luddite in that way. Like I like getting something in the mail from so and so. And so I just I have a stack of them sitting here on my desk, and I'll zip them out for no reason at all. Like, hey, bumped into you into the grocery store. Or I do them on anniversaries. I do them on closings. I do them on all sorts of things. And for me, like I have those, and then I have a couple of other like I have a few other weird like reasons I touch folks in my database. Um, and what it is in each one of those, I guess it comes back to that tea ceremony thing is that I'm trying to gamify the work so it doesn't feel like work
Yeah.
because I want to work. And
Yeah.
so, but I sure do like talking to my clients.
Well, so this is the beauty of it, right? Is that you have found a way to take what would be called a task, right? And otherwise would have the association of not wanting to do it. But you found a way to make that a positive, enriching experience for yourself, and therefore you do it. And if you do it on a routine basis and it produces results, it's a win-win for everybody, right? I mean, listen, handwritten notes are a lost art, which, by the way, following our lunch, I've started doing handwritten notes again. So I want to express gratitude to you for inspiring me to get back on track with that because you're right. I mean, our mail these days are either bills or, you know, marketing letters. And it's so nice to get a handwritten note for someone that you know, like, and respect. And a simple thank you is awesome. Or a hey, I'm thinking about you, whatever the case may be. It builds community. It makes them feel good. It makes you feel good. Um, so great. If you're going to spend time doing something, why not do something that's going to, feel right for you? So that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. So now, do you have a daily ritual of that?
I was actually just talking to my wife about it because I was sharing the tea ceremony thing again with her, and I always come back to these little texts. And it's funny. So when I'm good, yes, yeah, when I'm good, I'm usually like I'm at this desk and I've got my kind of 3 or 4 tasks that need to happen that are ritual. And then there's always some transactional stuff after that. And then the rest of it is kind of just time to respond. So it's almost like if I can, yeah, I show up, and I'm a ritual guy. Like it's the same cup for my daytime tea, and it's the same cup for my morning coffee. Like everything's around ritual like this. And if I execute on that, then I'm kind of done with exerting my will on the universe by the middle of the day. And then because of the nature of what my business is, I have the rest of the day to be responsive.
Yep.
Like, hey, lockbox isn't working. Can you drive to Hillsborough and let in the stager? Yes, I can. Like, I'm not so busy that I can't do that. And then sometimes I can reach out and I've got a lot of help and support. So yeah, when I'm good, yes, it's very ritualized. Um, and like anybody, I deviate from that when I'm off, but I feel better when I do it. I feel, and why do we do anything that's against our own best interests? We get away from the things that we know are best for us, right?
Well, so I think this is a couple things there is again back to the theme of are you a real estate professional, mortgage professional? Are you just a person that are creating some new goals and habits for yourself in 2025 to create different outcomes than what you've had in 2024 previously?
Yeah.
Number one, make something that you're going to enjoy doing and that's genuine to who you are, right? So again, knowing you, Josh, you're a very genuine person. You like to express gratitude, you like to build community, you like to help people. And the ritual of touching base with people that you've worked with in the past, sending handwritten notes is obviously, on style with that, right? So that fits. Other people may not may have different things that appeal to them. The point is find out who you are, find out what generates energy for you, your genius zone, so to speak. Stay in that lane. Number two, when do you do it? Do it first thing in the morning because as soon as you open your inbox, as soon as you start returning phone calls, you're starting this chain, this ping pong ball back and forth with people, and it's only going to deviate you from something that you rationally know right now is important to you and your outcomes in the future. So, Josh, I've got no doubt that with those habits and going into 2025, you are going to build back and have a successful year for sure. Okay, one question I want to end on that I like to ask everyone who comes on this podcast, and so I'll ask it to you as well. Here we are in December of 2024. You've been a licensed realtor now for 13 years. If you could go back in time and share a conversation with newly licensed Josh Hackenjos in the real estate industry, knowing what you know now, knowing all the experiences that you've had, what wisdom would you want to impart?
Oh boy. Um, I think to listen, you know, and I was fortunate enough that somebody did come along and smack me on the back of the head with that eventually. It was like, I can be clever and I can bring all sorts of fun information, but it's like your listening skills are like listening is a developable skill. And
Love it.
yeah. That would probably be it because I think the rest of it falls like you got to be good at your job. You're good at your job. Your systems are good. You execute well. But if you don't know why you're doing it for someone, like we're more likely to fumble the ball, right? Um,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's good stuff. Listen, approach conversations with curiosity, seek to help, be genuine to yourself. A great summation of who Josh Hackenjos is. Josh, thank you so much for spending time with us, imparting your wisdom. Good luck in 2025. If people want to get a hold of you, I believe they can find you on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, the
Yeah,
web,
there's a little joshhackenjos.com as well. Instagram, I'm on there.
Spotify.
No, you will find me on Spotify on some stuff. If you do a deep, deep search, it's like dark web to find anything where I've credited on the record. But yeah, and first Tuesday of every month, beginning in January at the Lake Theater in Lake Oswego, We're doing a jazz funk improv night with a bunch of local musicians.
Fun.
So like I just throw parties and invite people to them, and then I somehow sell real estate because of it. So that's where you can find me. Yeah.
Keep doing it. Josh, thank you so much for your time.
All right. Thanks,